I can.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't actually sure that my speakers were on. I was thinking that I would see your specific name in the handle. So sorry about that. I was waiting for you to join in.
No problem.
Anyway, anyway, thank you all. This mental health session for my tweet space is called making mental health check-ins a priority, and it is in celebration of World Mental Health Day. And it's just to really learn more about how we can all take our mental health seriously and what we can do to help ourselves or really seek the support from others. So to start the discussion, I just want to introduce our speaker. Valerie, you could tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Valerie, as she already mentioned, and I'm a psychotherapist practicing at Private Mirrors. I work a lot with clients struggling with mood disorders, stress and trauma related disorders, relationship issues, and just life challenges in general. Based here in Abuja, Nigeria. Yeah, that's about it.
All right, thank you, Valerie. And Lucy,
Thank
can
you.
you also introduce yourself and tell us about your nonprofit?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lucy. I am the founder of Mental Health for Youth Initiative. I'm also a lecturer at Beige University. Yeah.
Awesome, Lucy, thank you. So I just really want to focus this section on how to really help oneself with mental health. And I believe that one of the challenges to having a good sense of mental health also has to deal with your self-esteem, how you perceive yourself and how you perceive the world around you. So I just wanted to start a discussion with Valerie to talk about how can somebody develop their self-esteem and how is it really connected to their mental health.
Okay. Where do I start from? Okay, so when we talk about self-esteem, I think it's important that we bear in mind, a number of factors. We consider a number of factors. One specific one would be our environment. And when I say environment, I'm referring to family, school, peers, your society, because it plays a major role as to how we perceive ourselves, right? And from the word itself, self-esteem, to esteem or is to estimate, right? Is to evaluate yourself, is to judge yourself, right? Based on maybe your abilities, your capabilities. But the unfortunate thing there is that we as human beings tend to evaluate or judge ourselves based on a standard that does not necessarily account for you as a complete human being, right? So, for example, we would judge ourselves based on maybe my ability in school in a specific subject, or judge yourself based on how you're doing maybe at work, for example. But school work, it doesn't account for you completely as a human being. There's so many facets to you as a human being that we err in evaluating and judging ourselves based on one thing to account for the whole, right? So when you're thinking about your self-esteem, or when we're talking about our self-esteem, I think one important question you want to ask yourself is, whose standard? Based on whose standard am I evaluating or judging myself on? My perception of myself, where does it come from, right? In answering the question, how do you develop that, right? It's recognizing the part that you play in either building or, for lack of a better word, destroying your self-esteem. What do I mean by that? It's paying attention to how do you talk to yourself, right? When you find yourself in a difficult situation, in a situation maybe where you are anxious, a situation where you're scared, or whatever the case may be, how do you find that you're talking to yourself when you're presented with something challenging, right? are you talking to yourself in a very negative, very harsh, very mean way? Because that also, plays a huge role, right? You also want to pay attention to the people around you. How do they contribute to that? Are you in circles or in places where they encourage, knowingly or unknowingly, a negative evaluation of yourself, right? Do you find yourself in spaces, whether consciously or unconsciously, where people are talking down on you, and you just kind of accept it? Do you internalize when people speak negatively about you, or are you able to be assertive and stand up for yourself, right? I think I don't want to, talk too much, but I think these are two important, aspects when it comes to your self-esteem. Recognizing the part you play, recognizing how your environment plays a role, the people that you are around you, the people that you hang out with, the places that you go, how do they contribute to this, right? How do they build or destroy your self-esteem? How do you speak to yourself when you find yourself in difficult situations, the relationship you have with yourself as well? So I think these are a few things to pay attention to or to bear in mind in terms of developing your self-esteem. How it affects your mental health, I mean, it's vice versa. So maybe you're struggling, for example, with grief or anxiety or depression. It would affect the way you perceive yourself, especially if maybe you've not learned to manage these challenges or these difficulties, right? It would affect the way you perceive yourself. You probably think of yourself as less than, or this is only happening to me, or why is this happening to me? Depression, for example, right? There's research out there that states or that lets us know that there's certain parts of the brain that is affected by someone who's going through clinical depression. Parts of the brain that is in charge with your memory, that is in charge with that is in charge of your memory, that is in charge of the perception you have of yourself, right? So if research is telling us that when you are struggling with depression, it affects how you perceive things, it affects how you think about things, surely it's going to affect how you perceive yourself, right? So it definitely has a huge effect on your mental health. And generally speaking, when you feel good about yourself, it translates into how you see and interact with other people as well. I'm sure a lot of us have heard the saying, hurt people, right? So when you're feeling great, when you have a positive estimation of yourself, it's definitely going to translate to how you interact with people around you, how you work, your ability to do whatever, to engage yourself in whatever goals you may have for your life in general. So yeah, these are the things I would say when it comes to developing your self-esteem and how that can affect your mental health.
Yeah, thank you, Valerie. You made so many important points. Like, the main thing is that we need to evaluate ourselves and just really try to understand the way we are judging ourselves and the
Mm-hmm.
experiences that we've had, because it truly affects the way we perceive who we are, and how we even react to the world around us. So
Yeah.
it really matters when you develop your self-esteem to really try to understand what is your assessment of yourself.
Yep.
And also, what you said about really being careful about the circles, places, and how you internalize what people really push at you is very key, because
Mm-hmm.
in society we can't always control the people that we engage and interact with. There are just certain people that we have to interact with. So we all have to be mindful of how we are taking in other people's perceptions of us, because if you don't have a good perception of yourself, you can just so easily allow other people to seriously put you down based on their own perceptions. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. Could you
Thank you.
also share just some tips on how you build your confidence as it relates to self-esteem. I mean, some of the things that you've already mentioned before is that we have to be careful about the way we speak to ourselves and the relationship we have with ourselves. Do you have additional tips?
So I mean, your self-esteem and confidence, they're pretty much intertwined. But what I will say about your confidence is, I think people have this idea that, you're born with confidence. So if you're not confident, you're not confident, right? But that's not true. Confidence, I see confidence as a habit that you can build, right? And I know I mentioned already, your environment, but I want to sort of throw more light into your upbringing, your childhood, your family, right? Maybe not all, but a lot of people who tend to be confident, right, it's something they learned maybe from seeing their parents, from seeing their peers, just from the people that they've grown up with, right? So confidence is something that you can learn, and it's something that you can build upon. So the same way you say to yourself, you set a goal and you say to yourself, I want to work out and I want to be fit, right? You don't just wake up in the morning and you're fit. Nobody's born with fitness, right? Although genes play, a huge role, but it's something that you can work on. It's like a muscle. So if, for example, you want to be confident in public speaking, right? It's practicing and doing more of that up until you get to the point where you're confident enough to stand in front of people. If you want to be confident in whatever the case is, really, right? So I think the one thing I would say is never to think, it's too late, I can't be confident, this is something that you have to be born with. Actually think about it as a habit that I can build upon, that I can practice, up until I get to the point where I am happy and satisfied with my level of confidence, right? So yeah, it's a habit and it's something you can definitely work upon.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So confidence is something that we can continue to practice and build on. Like if it's not something you possess, it's just something that you should continue to work on over time, and
Yeah.
you sort of just keep going at it.
Yeah.
Now, I want to move on to my next question, which is really, what do you do when you feel a loss of meaning in your life? Because, mental health is also tied to sort of, I don't want to be too motivational, but I think our mental health is also tied to our sense of hope and feeling of purpose in life. That's actually what keeps you going. So I want you to just address the question of what do you do when you feel as though you have no purpose, your life seems to have no meaning. How do you sort of regain that hope again to wake up and keep going? Yeah.
Um, that's a very, very important question. And I think the first thing I would say there, not to sound too cliche, is not to be so hard on yourself. I say this because a lot of the times when people say they don't have a sense of meaning, or they've, lost their purpose or sense of purpose in life, like it feels like, that's the end, right? It feels like there's no point in moving forward. I must be the only one even experiencing this. But actually, it's a very normal thing to experience, because as you go on with life, or as you get on with life, right, challenges will come your way, difficulties will come your way. And in going through all of that, along the way, it's very possible that you lose your sense of meaning. It's very possible that you lose what life means to you, right? And it could be as a result of many different things. For example, let's say you've just lost someone or something important to you, right? You're grieving the loss of maybe your only parent, or you're grieving the loss of your identity. Maybe you tied your sense of identity to something and you've lost that something, maybe a relationship, maybe you're grieving your identity as a result of a transition or as a result of a trauma you've experienced. All of these things can make you feel like, what is the point, right? It can make life seem very bleak, right? And one thing you can do there is easier said than done, but is seeing it as a redirection and allowing yourself to feel every emotion that comes with it in this phase, right? And I say phase because as much as it can feel like it's never going to end, maybe this, I'm just destined to feel like there's no meaning to life anymore after whatever experience you've passed through, right? It may feel like that sometimes, but it can pass, right? So a few things you can do is first ask yourself, what were the things that meant something to me? What were the things that maybe gave me a sense of joy, a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, things that really meant something to me? What were they? Right? In noting all of these things down, is then asking yourself, why do I not feel a connection to these things anymore? Right? In answering that question, you may find that it goes back to realizing the source of that sense of loss, which is maybe your grief, which is maybe a struggle with depression, which is maybe whatever it is, right? There's always a source. So asking yourself, what were the things that meant something to me? Why do I not feel a connection to it? And answering that is also then, how do I go back to reconnecting with these things? And sometimes maybe you don't need to go back to reconnect with these things. Maybe you need to explore newer things, right? In helping you find meaning, right? So it's also being honest with yourself and asking yourself, what roles or role do I play in other people's lives? Because no man is an island, right? Sometimes we are trying to find meaning and purpose on our own, removing every other person from the picture, the people that matter to us, the people that we love, or the people that care about us. All of that and sort of isolate ourselves into thinking, okay, outside of these things that mean something to me, a sense of purpose, outside of people, created to be social beings, right? So it's asking yourself, what role or what roles do I play in other people's lives? People in your lives, genuinely, what they appreciate about you, right? So it's what you know, because the difficulty there, the things that you know are already making you feel like, I don't have any sort of connection to life anymore, or meaning to life anymore. So it's stepping out of what you already know, as people like to say, stepping out of your comfort zone and exploring and asking yourself these questions. I'm going to always repeat asking yourself questions, because a lot of the times it takes introspection. It takes you actually sitting with yourself and having a conversation with yourself and asking yourself questions for you to find the answers you're looking for, right? So these are some things, or this is something you can do when you find that there's a loss of meaning in your life, or you're feeling like you don't have a sense of purpose. Also, when we talk about purpose, a lot of the times we think of something, really huge, like we're waiting for this big bang, right, to hit us in the face for you to say, oh yes, this is my purpose. It could be in the little things. It could genuinely be in the little things, but we overlook it because we're looking for the big and the huge to give us meaning, to make us feel like, yes, I'm doing something. But maybe you are doing something purposeful, but it's little, and you see it as little as opposed to seeing it as meaningful, right? So yeah, those are the points I would make when it comes to struggling or dealing with a loss of meaning.
Once again, Valerie, thank you so much. I mean, your response was really insightful because when you feel a loss of meaning in your life, you find yourself in a very, very dark place.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not careful, you might not be sure how to pull yourself out of there.
Mm-hmm.
So, what you just said about trying to reconnect with things or explore new things to find meaning is really great because when you're in a dark place, you shouldn't just allow yourself to stay there.
Mm-hmm.
Try to find ways to connect to things that give you meaning and purpose. And I also really loved what you said about how purpose isn't something huge because I feel like, as for myself, sometimes I want to imagine my purpose to be big and something that has to just have this really great meaning. And so sometimes it puts so much pressure on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas purpose doesn't have to be big. The little things that you do that gives you a sense of joy and meaning matters. So I think that's something that everybody should really be mindful of. Your purpose doesn't have to be huge. The little things that keep you going and gives you meaning is really key. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just one last question for you would be based on the topic for this discussion. How can one always make their mental health a priority? It's something that we can do on an individual basis because we have to keep working on our mental health. It's not something that's a one fixed solution.
Um, I mean, when you talk about prioritizing your mental health, right? Um, I think it's important that we know that this is self, right? And to do that, you have to know yourself. There's no one size fits all when it comes to mental health. I know there's a lot of um, tips, advice, that we can give anyone or everyone. You have to realize that you have to understand yourself to know. Um, that way, you know the things that contribute positively or negatively to your mental health. So I could say it'd be good for you to read a book. I mean, everyone should read a book, right? But maybe that's not enjoy doing. Maybe that's not something that, you know, you connect with in any way, right? So maybe for you, it's I would rather be having conversations with my friends, or I would rather be out, you know, doing something else actively outside of reading, right? Maybe for you, reading only pertains to work and school, but it's never leisure for you, right? So you have to first understand yourself, know yourself, right? Know the things that work for you, know the things that help give a positive, your positive mental health, or a positive what's the word, can't think of the word, but just
The things that help to get you to a good state of mind.
yes, pretty much,
Yeah.
right? So knowing the negatives and the so not just the positives. So in terms of the negatives, what are the things that you find yourself, in your heart that this is absolutely not good for my mental health? So for example, yes man or a yes woman, you say yes to everything, to the detriment of everything, right? Learn to say no, right? You find that you have no boundaries because you always want to be seen as the one who is able to, you know Valerie can do all this, whatever it is. But you have to learn to have boundaries because you cannot have time to refuel yourself so that you can actually give what you would love to give to others in terms of time, attention, your emotions, and all of that, right? So you know that you're engaging in, what are the things that you know that are not great for you personally when it comes to your mental health. So knowing yourself would be one way to prioritize your mental health. Also with work, right? I think it's important that you know your strengths and your weaknesses. Do you find difficulty asking for help when it comes to your workload? I know sometimes we tend to have horrible bosses, who just don't understand, that it's important to delegate and share workload. But on your part, right, are you able to ask for help when needed, right? Are you able to say, propose to your organization that it would be good to have an in-house therapist for staff, right? So most important thing, honestly, that I would like anyone to take away is know and understand yourself. That way you're able to put into action the things that actually work for you and know the things that don't work for you, so you don't find yourself engaging in this one size fits all. Oh, I have to do this because this person is doing this and it works for them and I have to do this. No, know and understand yourself, right, would be one way to prioritize your mental health.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And I think it's really important when you said, oh, we have to know ourselves because we each have different personalities. Like you even said, some people reading might be something that you feel like you have to do. For me, reading is a way for me to
Mm-hmm.
relax and enjoy myself. So that's my personality. And also, when it comes to my mental health, over time, I've realized that being physically
Mm-hmm.
active is a key ingredient to my
Mm-hmm.
happiness. Like when I come out of the gym, I just feel like as though I have so much
Mm-hmm.
energy and I have joy with
Mm-hmm.
me. So it really matters to know yourself because then you would know how you can better take care of
Mm-hmm.
yourself and your mental health. And we all have different
Yeah.
personalities. How I am as an introvert is not going to be the same way somebody else is as an
Mm-hmm.
extrovert and getting so much maybe joy or energy being in a big social group or club.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to know ourselves and know how to really take care of our mental health based on our own different personalities. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you so much for all of that. Thank you so much for answering those questions.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. And now I'm going to move on to our next speaker, which is Lucy from Mental Health for Youth Initiative.
Hi, good evening. Can everyone hear
Hi,
me?
good evening, Lucy. Yes, we can hear you very well.
Oh, that's good.
Yes. So I want to really discuss some myths to debunk around mental health because what you're really doing is around mental health for youth in Nigeria. And through interactions with certain people, there's definitely a lot of stigma. Even though things are improving, there's really definitely a lot of stigma around mental health. I've come across certain people who say some very inappropriate and insensitive things around mental health. So, just to start things off, what are some myths to debunk around mental health?
Okay, so the first is there's this saying I heard one time that depression no dey affect African man. So people believe that because I'm black, I don't need therapy or I don't need to speak with someone. I'll just handle whatever it is. So number one is mental health issues can actually happen to anybody.
Hmm.
And let me just clarify something. So now when we talk about mental health, most people feel like it's something that like someone be like, oh, God forbid, I don't have mental health issues. It can be as little as not sleeping well, not eating well, or being overly scared of maybe like cockroach or something. It's as little as that. So when we talk about mental health, it's really, really broad. But then there are just some bits that people know about. So generally, people just be like, mental health is not my portion. Like, I can't, that cannot happen to me. So that's one major myth that I know people say a lot. And secondly, it has to do with mental health issues actually start at a very young age. Most times, it starts developing from 13, 14, and eventually goes to an older age. So, just to clarify, anyone within any age range and either male or female can actually have mental health issues. I'm glad that people, especially men, are beginning to speak up. And when they have issues, they can now say, oh, this is what I'm going through, and all of that, compared to before, that the African man would say, like, chest it up, or you're a man, man up, and all of that. So I'm glad that a lot of people are beginning to debunk that, because anyone, I mean, literally anyone, male, female, boy, girl, child, an adult, anyone literally can actually have mental health issues. I think one other again would be, mental health issues can actually be treated. Now, there are some, like for example, drug addiction, the person might need to be checked into a rehab. For depression, you can get antidepressants and all of that. So they're actually, just like you're sick and you go to the hospital and they give you medications for your physical ailments, you can actually have medications for your for your mental ailments. And then one other thing that people say that is really insensitive is people are just seeking attention by being the way they are. So now, someone who is bipolar, for example, might act out. Maybe one time the person is happy, and the next second the person is really sad. And you feel like, oh, this person is just trying to seek attention. Or maybe a depressed person is acting in a very strange way, or a suicidal person putting out some weird messages on social media or somewhere, or telling you, and you just feel like, oh, they're just seeking attention and all of that. Most people do not do that for attention. It's just because that's how they feel. And unfortunately, a lot of people cannot help themselves. Like, you literally, like this one time, some years ago, I was depressed at some point, and it's a feeling that you can't help it. And the worst part of it all is that at some point you start feeling bad that your mood is affecting the people around you. So it's like feeling bad two times: first for how you feel, and secondly for affecting the people around you. So most people that go through mental health issues, one myth that should be debunked is that most of them are not attention seekers. I'm not saying people don't do it for attention, but we should be more sensitive when when someone is saying or acting a certain way, and we just feel like the person is just seeking for attention. And I think the last one I'll just mention is, it's not only the madman you see on the street, or someone that you've known that tried to commit suicide, or someone that just has some really weird moods and all. It's not only them that actually have mental health issues. There's several types of mental health issues. And most times it doesn't show in the face. If we actually listen to the stories that have been told of recent on social media and all, you find out that most people that have killed themselves in the past few months that we know about, sometimes they have their life going well, they have a lot of things going on for them, or sometimes life of the party, but still they go through a lot in the closet. So I'm just trying to say for the last one that it's not just the ones that you see, like the mad person or those that are acting out. People go through a lot in their heads that they might not be able to actually say out. I think I'm just going to stop there for the answer.
Yeah, let's see. Wow. You just, I don't know, you just said a lot of so many amazing things. I mean, it's like so many things that we need to break down. I mean, first of all, I just loved what you said about the fact that mental health issues can happen to everybody. And I feel like as Africans, we assume it's a Western thing. And even me, for a certain period of time, I just thought that when you talk about mental health, it's only white people go to therapy, only white people have mental health issues. As an African and as a Christian, I just sort of assumed, well, mental health doesn't affect me. I just need to go and pray to God. So what you said about the fact that mental health can affect everybody matters, and even at a young age. And I also love the fact that you even brought gender into the discussion, because the reality is that, well, I'm not a man, but I can imagine that certain men, especially in the African culture, they have difficulty expressing themselves because there's a certain perspective that we have of how a man can be. And you can imagine it can be very difficult if they are not able to fully express their feelings and know that it's okay to hurt sometimes. So the fact that you said that was really, really brilliant. And also the fact that you also mentioned the fact that mental health issues can actually be treated. It's not a death sentence. You don't just say that, oh, somebody's struggling from this, so that's it. Their life is they're just condemned, or like they can never overcome that. Mental health issues can definitely be treated. And what you also said about having mental health issues, and it can be difficult because it not only affects your mood, but it affects the people around you. So it's just something that we have to also be mindful of when we are treating our mental health issues, because the way people react to us is actually a big deal. And it actually takes me back to a moment when I remember somebody told me that, oh my God, you seem sad. And it was sort of like such a strange thing to hear somebody telling me that, because I felt like, oh wow, so is it written in my face? And it was also like a way of shaming me. So it made me feel like, oh, I need to mask my sadness. So it's very interesting when you think about mental health and how it affects you and the people around you. But what you just said, like, was really, really brilliant. Mental health issues can happen to everyone. It can happen to children, it can happen to adults, it can happen to older persons. So nobody is immune to it. And the little things, mental health issues are in the little things that happen around us. So, and also we have to be mindful and sensitive that it's not only women who deal with mental health issues, that men also struggle with mental health issues, and they should also be encouraged to speak up and get help. I'm actually really grateful that you mentioned that, because sometimes I think I don't even consider the aspect of men needing help also, but they are human and they also need help. So thank you so much for bringing that up. That was really wonderful. So, yeah, like so
Thank you.
many great points you just made, and so simply. Anyway, the next question I wanted to take on is, how can Nigerian youths, specifically Nigerian youths, take care of their mental health in a difficult climate? Like, what can we do to help ourselves?
Right. So I'm going to start with a webinar that my organization did, I think earlier this year, or I think last year. So we talked about the impact of social media on your mental health. Now, what you consume, how much negative. Now, I'm answering this in respect to, you said, Nigerian youth. So, as funny as it is, avoiding social media and all of the bad news sometimes is actually good for your mental health, because when you consume so much negative things or be around negative people that have a solution, have a problem to every solution, or just have people that it's just there's nothing good, there's no good vibe around them. This kind of people drain even the little positivity that you actually have. So being mindful of what you take in from social media, from the company that you keep, to sometimes just also listening to some certain things or reading some certain books, just being mindful of what you consume, because whatever you consume is what your mind actually plays out to affect you eventually. Also, Valerie and you also mentioned the importance of exercise. Now, as everyone actually needs to exercise, like it's actually good for the body. And there are also some mindful exercises like yoga and meditation. All of those things actually just help you to calm your mind. So, in the case where you're going through like a whole very busy or crazy day, you can just take some time to just sit down, do some stretches on your seat, or maybe in your house when you're back home before you go to bed, or in the morning, whenever. All this lead to, if you study yoga well, you actually find out that yoga is actually a very good stress releaser. So there are some things you do that actually helps to calm your nerves, which eventually helps you to have a more sane um, mind. Because once you're tensed and worked up in your head, there's no way that you'd actually be sane. Eventually, just imagine not being able to sleep for 2, 3 days. Like you would be very irritable, and almost nothing would make sense to you because your body needs to be calm. So that's the importance of exercises, both mindful and physical exercises. And something that we have, I think Valerie had touched on this earlier, speaking up, the importance of actually speaking up. So no matter whatever it is you're going through, not just speaking up, but speaking up to the right people. So if you have someone, if you're going through whatever and you have someone that you can trust to actually understand, sometimes you just need a listening ear. And you need to be mindful of the kind of person that you speak to, because some people just, they say a problem shared is half solved, but there are some individuals that when you share your problem with them, it doubles or triples and all. So be very mindful while trying to speak up. Get someone that you can trust, or someone, or a therapist. Now, if you probably have spoken to someone around you and you're not really getting better, or you actually need like a professional help, then seeking therapy, seeking professional help is very, very, very important. That actually, so I've actually had students. I had one of my students who didn't know exactly what was wrong with her until she spoke with the doctor, and the doctor asked her some questions, and eventually she realized what the problem was. So there are many cases where people don't know what they're going through, which is why it's important to actually see a psychologist, because it makes more sense and it just makes you not feel crazy that, oh, like this happens. It's not just me. I'm not weird. It's something that happens. And with speaking with someone, with doing this or doing that, I can actually get better. And yeah, I think that's mainly about it. Just trying to seek help and avoid some bad habits. So, like maybe smoking a lot or taking alcohol. So, all of those are substance abuse that can eventually affect your mental health. So, having healthy exercises, having healthy habits and exercises, and something I read something yesterday or so, talking about the importance of having a schedule. So if you plan your day and say, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that, it also kind of helps you to feel more fulfilled at the end of the day, which eventually boosts your mind and boosts your self-esteem, boost how you feel, because you feel like, oh, I'm actually doing something, I'm making progress, I'm yet to reach my goal, and this is how far I've gone. So planning also helps with that. So basically, embracing positive attitudes and exercises and speaking with someone, either a therapist or a trusted person, would help in this case. I think I'm done.
Yeah, that was great, Lucy. Thank you. And some of the points that you mentioned is I like the points you made about social media. And as much as I think social media is a great place to be informed and inspired, sometimes too much consumption of social media can really be bad for your mental health. And I think especially as youths, so much consumption can lead to negative comparisons and wanting your life to be a certain way. So I think it really matters that when somebody is struggling from mental health issues and they are in a very dark space, they should definitely take a break from social media, because it can have a very negative effect on your mental health, because it sort of distorts your reality when you feel as though everybody is leading this happy and perfect life, and then you look at your life and you're like, wait, so what's going on here? So definitely taking a break from social media, or just maybe curating your feed so you're being mindful of what you consume, is definitely key when it comes to mental health and youth. And the point about exercise, like I said before, exercise definitely really helps me in my mental health. And I think as Nigerians, I think more Nigerians actually able to embrace exercise than they have in the past, which is great. But I still think that sometimes people like assume that we are only exercising just to lose weight. So if somebody sees that you're not overweight, I've never been overweight, fortunately, but I know that I exercise because it really affects my mindset. It helps me to have a positive mindset. So exercising is not only for weight loss, it actually has to do with the mind. And it's key that more people embrace that, because it really helps you to have a positive state of mind. what you also said about speaking up to the right people matters, because sometimes if you share your problems with the wrong people, it can really have a detrimental effect on your life. So you have to be really careful about who you're sharing your problems to. And of course, that's why seeking professional mental help from experts like you and Valerie really matters. So speaking up to the right people matters. And also, like you said, embracing a positive attitude. But there's something I wanted you to actually discuss more about, because as much as it matters to speak up to the right people, in Nigeria, if you feel as though you don't have access to getting therapy, then how do you how do you find a space where you can confide in somebody, or do you just suggest finding close friends or family members to speak to, because not everybody has access to therapy services in Nigeria. So how can somebody that doesn't have access to therapy be able to get the support they need? If you could just address that before we go to the next question.
Right. So, unfortunately, like you just mentioned, seeking professional help from psychologists and psychiatrists is actually really expensive. It's actually expensive everywhere in the world. Where you get to pay, like abroad, you get to pay a huge amount of money per hour to speak with a therapist and all. In Nigeria, apart from it being expensive, we do not have a lot of people that um, go into the field to want to do this, mainly because before now, I mean, right now, people are beginning to accept that mental health is actually a deal and we should do something about it. But before now, there were not a lot of things happening, and people were not. You have a lot of psychologists, people going to school to study psychology, but they don't really do anything their with their certificates. So there's a shortage of psychologists in Nigeria to start with. And secondly, even the ones that are available are really expensive. So in the case where you do not have access to that, trying to confide in someone, I think would be a very good start. Someone you actually trust would be a good start. And in some cases, if you maybe do a little research on your own, maybe the symptoms to try and understand what you're going through, that's on your own level. But that, as we know, can be a bit confusing, which is why, again, we need like a professional. So one thing my organization is actually working on is trying to provide a toll-free helpline for like a national mental health helpline. So anyone that needs to speak with a psychologist, be able to do that for free. That will be launched sometime this year. But for now, like my organization, what we do is like when we get messages and calls, we just refer them to psychologists, our psychologists, and the person speaks to them and we do like follow-ups and all. So that's what we do on a small scale, and we're trying to do on the bigger scale, which is why we're trying to launch the mental health toll-free line. So I mean, until that happens, if you can't get help from, if you can't what's the word, if you can't afford to see a therapist or a psychologist, then I think having to speak with someone around you, would someone you trust, should actually help to start with, in my opinion.
Great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It matters to try to speak to people who are close to you and just share your thoughts, share your feelings, because definitely talking about things really matters. We can't hold everything in, because at the end of the day, it will be really detrimental to us. We have to be willing to share and express things with the right people. The right people is the key word there. And okay, my last question, which I feel as though you probably already addressed, is what are the different tips for maintaining one's mental health? You've talked about exercise, yoga, meditation, speaking to the right people, and avoiding bad habits like smoking, taking alcohol, things like that. Is there any additional thing you want to add for how we on an individual basis can really help to maintain our mental health?
I think one other thing I probably didn't mention was the importance of support groups. Now, when you have, or when you find, although they're not very common, but when you find a support group for your something you're going through, having people that are experiencing the same kind of issues with you, talking about their experiences, probably also talking about how they got better and all of that, that could also help someone to maybe get better or get out of the space that they're in. So I think I didn't mention support groups. Support group is very important, and I think I also mentioned to avoid some certain kind of crowd. So it's not everyone, as much as you might want to have friends, there are actually some human beings that are bad for your mental health. So those people that are like really negative, like those people that have a problem for, sorry, have a solution, sorry, have a problem for every solution. So you're trying to say, oh, I'm doing this, and then you just think of all of the negatives to it. So those kind of people you avoid, or people that generally your spirit, your mind do not feel comfortable being around. As much as we don't really believe in your fourth sense, or um, there's this common word to use. I'm trying to remember. So as long like you just your gut feeling. As much as most people don't really even understand their gut feeling and all, sometimes when you don't feel comfortable with some certain people or people that speak it a way that make you feel less of yourself or make you feel a certain way, those are the kind of people you need to avoid if you can. Because unfortunately, some of those people are like our bosses or our elder ones and all. But if you can avoid negative energy, negative vibes, that would also add to promoting your mental health. I'm done.
Okay, great. Thank you. The importance of support groups matter, and to have people who have experienced the same things is great. And also, I like the fact that you mentioned the fact that you have to be careful about the people you surround yourself with. People don't surround yourself with people whose spirits, does not really, you don't have a good energy around them. And I think this really matters for youth because I think sometimes, so like, I think it's a natural thing to want to belong. You want to belong to a group, you want to connect with other people. But we have to be careful because as we are planting ourselves in different environments, are we actually in environments where it's a positive energy? Are we in the right environment where people are building us up, or are they tearing you down? Because I feel like it's so easy to put yourself in an environment, but then you're not really careful about how this environment you're in is truly affecting you. So I think for the youth, it's like not just putting yourself in different groups, but being mindful that what value are you getting from this group? At the end of the day, when you leave the group, do you go home and you feel good about yourself, or you feel like, okay, wow, you feel worse about who you are? So you have to really be mindful about who you associate with. It's not really the quantity, it's actually the quality of the people we surround ourselves with. So that's actually my last question. Thank you so much for the points. Thank you so much for answering the questions, Lucy.
You're welcome.
Yes, and now I'm going to open up the discussion to some of our listeners, whether they want to also share their own tips on how they maintain their mental health, or if they have any questions for our speakers, Valerie and Lucy, you can just let me know, and I will put you on as a speaker.
Before anyone comes on, I just wanted to quickly say, whilst Lucille was speaking about the toll-free line, there is actually one for Abuja. It's not national, but there's one by the Sunshine series, and it's free. You can just dial 112 if you are in Abuja and you'll be connected to a counselor. Also, whilst we're speaking about gut feeling, I thought to also mention, we talked about exercise and all of that, the importance of eating right, because there's actually a connection between your gut and your nervous system. So you find that for some people who experience anxiety, for example, find that when they're anxious, they tend to have maybe tummy upset, they need to use the loo, or just cramping in their tummy and things like that. So that connection says to us that it's important what you put into your body, because that actually affects your mood. It has a high effect on your mood. The food that you put into your system is basically fuel for your brain, and we know that physically, there is, whenever you're experiencing or struggling with any mental health related issue, we can physically see the difference in the brain, right? So, what you eat as well is very, very important when it comes to your mental health. So, yeah, I just wanted to point those two things out.
Well, thank you so much for mentioning that, Valerie. That's actually a good point, because when you think about mental health, you don't always assume that what you eat is also connected to affecting how you feel. So I guess we have to actually be more mindful about what we are putting in our body, because it can affect the way we react. Do you have any tips for the right sorts of things that somebody should consume for their mental health, like the
And
right type of food?
I mean, it's the basics, just ensuring that you are taking a balanced meal. You're taking enough fruits. I know that the research is very what's the word, encourages more of the greens, right? The greens help a lot, so make sure you
Yeah.
eat your veggies. We hear this
Hmm.
literally from childhood, to make sure you're
Yeah.
eating your veggies, but even as an adult we see that it's very important. Your veggies, your fruits, just ensure that you're eating a balanced meal, and you don't have to break the bank for that, right?
Hmm.
um yeah, so just the right meals, balanced diet will do, really.
Thank you so much for that point again. Yes, we have to eat the right sort of foods, eat vegetables and fruits to also help us maintain our mental health. And if any other person wants to say something, if a listener wants to share their input, their thoughts, I'm just going to give it a few minutes, because wow, we've already spent an hour. So just let me know, and then we would close off the space discussion. Okay, if there are no questions for our speakers or no additional input, I would end our Tweet Space discussion. I want to say thank you so much to Valerie from Private Mirrors. If you also want to talk a little bit about more of what you do, you can just definitely feel free to share. Thank you so much for answering the questions. The answers were amazing. And thank you, Lucy, also for answering the questions. I appreciate the two of you providing your expertise for this particular topic. And to people who might listen to this after, please feel free to reach out to them and just try to get some resources, some support. And definitely, I've been taking notes. I'll continue to utilize what I've learned to work on my mental health, because we are all a work in progress. So thank you so much, ladies. I really appreciated this. And thank you so much to our listeners also. I appreciated you. I appreciate you joining us for this particular topic. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you for having
Isioma.
us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for anyone who obviously wants to reach out, you can just go straight to my website at privatemirrors.com, or send me an email, hello.mindwellness@privatemirrors.com, and I'll be happy to help with bettering your mental health. Thank you for this space, Isioma. It was very insightful.
Thank you, Valerie, once again. And I will close off this sweet space discussion. Thank you, everybody, and have a good evening. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.